Hello, my name is Kevin Booth. I've been doing film and video and audio for, probably well over 20 years now. Got my start back in Houston. My brother, who was older than me, he was 9 years older than me, played in a lot of rock bands. Grew up here in Los Angeles in the 60s where he played in rock bands. And so I was always surrounded by all kinds of musical equipment and recording studio equipment. As I got older, I started building my own little recording studios out of just various tape decks that I could get my hands on and all that. And in high school then, I met Bill Hicks, who turned out to be a famous comedian who was also now deceased. He died back in '94 of pancreatic cancer, but Bill and I were best friends for 17 years, and I ended up producing a lot of his records and several of his videos, and we worked on many other projects together. And since Bill died, I also worked with Joe Rogan, Doug Stanhope, and I worked with a conspiracy guy, Alex Jones, for many, many years. And so back in 2005, my wife Trey and I bought this house up here in the hills and finished doing American Drug War, and we were able to get it out on the Showtime network and also won several film festival awards. The one thing that I try to do with American Drug War is connecting a lot of dots of stories that you've heard before. You know, I'm not the first guy to ever tell a story about Ricky Ross of the crack epidemic and how the CIA was caught bringing in cocaine that Ricky Ross was turning into crack into South Central that he used to spread throughout the country and turn that into like the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s. And I'm not the first person to ever talk about how the pharmaceutical companies are, you know, pumping incredible amounts of crazy medications, especially now to our children. In fact, I wish I would have had more time to go into it more as far as talking about, you know, Prozac and Ritalin and all those type of drugs. I think I actually had to cut a chapter due to time constraints. It's hard to believe. So it's not really so much like I set out to make some sort of like a grand conspiracy linkage and everything like that. Really what I just try to do is I just try to parallel all these ways that these different industries are making money, regardless of whether they're legal or not, and just kind of showing how it's all really just the same thing. You know, you let the person decide which one is evil and which one is not. You know, I don't know if we're gonna see just the general overall legalization of marijuana in our lifetime. Depends on like what your lifetime is. Let's just say, for the sake of this argument,
so your lifetime.
Next, okay, let's say I'm lucky enough to live another 20 years. You know, I would be happy if we could just, you know, take this thing step by step. I used to not think that the medical marijuana movement was like gonna help towards legalizing marijuana, but now here in California, I see that it is, because the whole society here is really become acclimated to what it's like having legal marijuana, and for all practical purposes, marijuana is more legal here than it is in places like Amsterdam, because you can buy larger amounts of it and you can transport larger amounts of it. But I would like to think, though, that the drug war is going to end and marijuana is going to get legalized, not because, you know, it solves glaucoma or it's good for people or anything like that, but because of money. And if you study prohibition, and if you study like why prohibition ended, you find out that it was for money. People didn't say, oh, let's legalize alcohol because it'll help, you know, somebody like relieve their nausea from chemotherapy or something like that. No, the government doesn't care about you. All they care about is money. You know, it's got to be some people's jobs out there to be kind of like the watchdog. And I still just think, though, that, you know, like Judge Gray in my movie says that 85% of all illegal drug users only smoke marijuana. So if you take marijuana out of the drug war equation, the whole drug war thing with all the prisons and task force and DEA agencies and all these hundreds of thousands of employed people that make a living off busting people just because of what they want to do with their own bodies, will all come crumbling down. So they have to keep, from their standpoint, they have to keep marijuana involved in this whole drug war nonsense. But now that our economy is like all crumbling apart, people are going to have to start getting real. And, you know, just like we can't afford to support car manufacturers that build crappy cars, we can't afford to support government agencies that are doing things that don't help anybody, such as locking people in cages because they grow marijuana. But it was years ago then I started thinking like, well, what if we did a reality show about Ricky getting out of prison? And that's what Ricky was like, yeah, that sounds great. So we had actually been working on this idea of a reality show for probably over 4 years now. And the idea of the reality show was that, you know, Ricky at his heyday was making several $1 million a day selling crack cocaine that was being supplied by the CIA. Now, a lot of people would just think like, well, okay, anybody could do that, right? Any idiot can do that. Well, see, after knowing Ricky and knowing like what kind of a networker he is and how he's just like a super, you know, he's not like a gangster type of guy at all. He's like a networker and a really professional, kind, courteous businessman, really polite. And the idea is that Ricky is going to earn $1 million in 1 year without breaking the law. And this $1 million is going to be separate from like any kind of like, you know, movie advance deals or, you know, record company advances or anything like that. This is going to be like the $1 million that he's going to start by earning by flipping burgers at a McDonald's, then investing it into something and then doing something with that. So he's going to create $1 million before your very eyes in a year or less. And that's going to be our reality show that we're going to start filming here any day. We've actually started shooting it already. And with a lot of the other characters that are in the Ricky Ross reality show. But Ricky was supposed to get out of jail just 2 days ago, and as of right now, the warden is kind of messing with him a little bit. So, you know, we're actually on standby right now, and as soon as the phone call comes in, it's going to be like Cannonball Run, where I'm going to be driving across the United States with Ricky with like 24 hours to get to the halfway house.